Welcome to the Here's Waldo podcast, where we sit down with top visionaries and creatives in the video game industry. Together, we'll unravel their journeys and learn more about the path they're forging ahead. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hi, I'm Lizzie Mintus. I am the founder and CEO of Here's Waldo Recruiting, and this is the Here's Waldo podcast. In every episode, we dive deep into conversations with creatives and founders and executives. You can expect to hear valuable lessons from their journey and get a glimpse into the future of the industry. This episode is brought to you by you guessed it, Here's Waldo Recruiting. We work with game and tech firms and prioritize quality over quantity. We find you who you need. Today we have Vishal, he goes by Vish Punwani with us. Vish is the CEO and co-founder of SoWork, founded at Harvard. SoWork is the world's first generative AI enhanced virtual workplace, which transforms productivity and team cultures for thousands of teams around the globe. Vish is very interesting. I met him at a conference. He does all of the things. Besides being a CEO, he is a medical doctor, an entrepreneur in residence with Harvard Alumni Entrepreneurs, a mentor at Oxford, MIT, and several Hollywood startups. In his prior life, Vish worked at the World Health Organization in Geneva and became one of the highest rated teaching fellows at the Khan Academy in Health and Medicine. He likes traveling, playing video games and ice hockey, and building things with smart people. Let's get started. Glad to have you here. For those who don't know or use SoWork, can you please dive a little bit deeper into what it is?
Sure, yeah. And thanks for having me, Lizzie. It was great meeting you at, I think it was GDC last year. That was a lot of fun. Yeah, so work basically it's a virtual workplace, it's a virtual office platform. Looks and feels like a video game, kind of like Animal Crossing or Zelda or something like that. But it has a whole bunch of workplace tools layered in. So every, user or teammate of yours will have their own avatar. You'll have a customizable workplace that, the customization works just like it does in The Sims. In fact, one of the main people who built The Sims, his name is Bing Gordon. He's one of our angels and one of my closest mentors. So he was really, really instrumental in us building the customization function of SoWork. Anyway, when your avatars walk up to each other, you'll automatically connect over live stream video and audio. When you walk away, you'll automatically disconnect. So it's very good for spatial and fluid calls, simulating the office environment. And what we started to do over the last, I guess, year and a half is implement a lot of these more cutting edge AI workplace features. So you can automatically have your meetings summarized and transcribed, and action items can automatically be generated for all your meetings, and then those can be automatically assigned in Asana to the right people, etc. So it's just a really fun thing to build that seems to be making an impact for people around the world.
Yeah, what a cool experience. I love how you've gamified work, and I didn't know that about The Sims. What is SoWork? What does it stand for?
So SoWork, SOWORK, it means social online work. And it kind of comes from like I had the whole idea when we were actually building a different software on campus at Harvard. And when the pandemic hit, we were all kicked off campus, obviously. So was pretty much everybody else in the world. And
Yeah.
my team was basically spread out around Boston. And, every day jumping onto Slack and Zoom, it just kind of sucked. Like it felt like the lifeblood of my team was kind of slowly seeping out because I'm like a really big in-person guy. So it's actually kind of ironic that I'm building SoWork. But, I thought about the times in my life when I felt super connected to people despite being across long distances. And it always reminded me of the time I played World of Warcraft. I'm sure you're familiar given what you do. So I had so much fun playing that game when I was like 18, 19 years old. I met so many of my best friends playing that game. And it turns out there's actually a fair amount of organization and work and stuff like that when you are playing that game at a high level. Like the raids were 40 people instead of like 5 to 10 nowadays. And you have to keep track of like banking, and there's like a ledger system, and there's all sorts of coordination and organization of people and work in that
Yeah.
game. And so we wanted to translate that over to help on both the social and the productivity side. And that's why we came up with social online work.
So you were inspired, you would say, by World of Warcraft. That's where the idea kind of came from.
Totally,
It mixed
totally.
with the circumstance of the pandemic.
Yeah.
And what were you building before, and how did you make this transition?
Um, we were building something that I like to call the Spotify of education, specifically health sciences, nursing, medical education. So basically, what we would do is we would work with schools. We worked with Harvard, we worked with UBC, we worked with Calgary, we worked with McMaster, we worked with a whole bunch of schools across the US and Australia as well, and the UK. We had like lots of people all over the world. And basically, what we would do is we'd work with the medical and nursing faculties, tie into their testing systems, and figure out where all the students were in all of their various competencies inside those subjects. For example, in med school, it's kind of broken out into like biochem and pharmacology and histology and cardio and pulmonology, etc. And we'd kind of, based on testing results from the schools, we would be able to figure out where each student was on any of those dimensions. And then we would be able to serve up from the internet all of the most used resources that successful students around the world. Remember, we would know which successful students were
Yeah.
using what based on the grades. So we'd be able to serve up all of the most high yield items from the internet that everybody was using to all the people who really needed them. So it's kind of like instead of you going out on the internet and finding the stuff that you need to learn topic X, Y, and Z, that stuff would be streamed to you based on you and what you needed. So that's why we called it the Spotify of education.
Cool. And then did you keep the same team? Like when you had to make this pivot, did any of the
Mhm.
tech transfer? I feel like business transitions are stressful and not everybody makes it. So how did you make it through? What did you change? What did
Yeah.
you keep? Who did you add to your team?
Yeah. Well, it turns out that a lot of engineers were inspired by gaming when they were little.
Yes.
And so that was a really fortunate point for us. And we had a number of engineers on our team at the time when we were building the prior software that just love building games. And if you have an engineering team, you can just ask them, hey, like show of hands, how many of you guys have built a game? How many of you were inspired by playing video games when you were little? It'll be like 90% of them, right?
Yeah.
So like, that's how we discovered that essentially. And so we were able to keep pretty much the whole team because you know we were very excited about working together. Like we were all excited about the problem, sure, but we were all extra excited about working together because we had developed these really strong friendships over time. And the core of the team, like we'd gone so far back, like the core of our team had known each other for like 10, 12 years. And
Oh,
so
wow.
we were super close. So like we were going to work on problems together for probably the rest of our lives, right? And
Okay.
so we did end up running into lots of roadblocks as we pivoted. We had to kind of let some of our team members go who kind of weren't the right fit for the new direction and speed because it's building outside of education is a lot faster. And
Yeah.
some people, they prefer a bit more stability. So that was a learning. The second learning was many of our angel investors were inspired by the mission that we had in the prior company, which was about if we were able to kind of build these algorithms that were super good at training healthcare professionals, you can take that to all sorts of countries around the world that are less resourced when it comes to delivering a world-class education. And so a lot of our angel investors were inspired by that mission, and to see us switch was a painful transition for many of them. I'm close with all of our, I mean, I would say 90% of our angel investors today, 95%. And so they some of them who initially were not on board came around. Some of them we were never able to kind of bring over, but that's life. Business is tough.
Yeah, I mean, at least your company has survived instead of shutting down. They're
Totally,
yeah, after all.
totally.
Okay. And so then when you started the company, you had this team, which you knew each other for a long time. Where did you meet them?
Mm. Um, this is this is kind of ridiculous, but Mark, our CTO, I met him playing World of Warcraft. And so it
Same
was,
thing meant
I
to me.
know, that game, I swear. So I accidentally joined an Australian server. So I was on the West Coast at the time, like when I first started playing, when I was 18. And I had a friend who I used to always play Dota with and Warcraft 3. So this is obviously way back in the day. Warcraft 2, 3, we grew up playing like initial Command and Conquer, then Age of Empires, then Warcraft 1, 2, Tides of what's it called? Reign of Chaos, and then Tides of something. Anyway, and then we started playing Dota, and then we started playing World of Warcraft. And so I just like, you pick the server and I'll just join it. He's a night owl. And so
Oh, like,
inadvertently, he picked an Australian server, even though we were in North America. And so I made friends with all these Australians, including our current CTO, Mark, and he's also one of our co-founders. It turns out he's like the strongest engineer anybody's ever met. So
perfect.
he was just perfect. So like I remember when we brought him over to Harvard, like there was this lineup that was always there that was at his desk, like of all the students. There's kids who would come from both the proper university as well as from MIT who would line up to ask him questions about stuff. And at some point, I had to be like, okay, we're shipping slower because Mark is helping all these people with questions.
Yeah.
So,
How
like,
blessed, Mark.
seriously, so I had to put a sign up on his desk that said, "Do not talk to Mark. If you want to talk to Mark, talk to me first, and then I will decide whether you can talk to Mark or not." Because it was just getting out of hand. So that went on for months.
I should have had Mark on the
Oh my
podcast.
God, he's so good. I honestly, if there's somebody I'm consistently impressed with over and over, it's my two co-founders, Emma and
Oh,
Mark. Emma, I had met a couple years after Mark, but I met her in undergrad, and then we ended up working together, teaching anatomy. Then we taught biology. Then we worked at Khan Academy together. Then we worked at the WHO together. So we've worked together in a ton of different things. Then we worked at Harvard together, actually. And I saw that she was super thoughtful and probably the smartest person overall that I know. And so it made sense. And each of us, the three of us, we tackle such different parts of the business and the founder pie, I guess, that it's just an awesome combination, which makes it easier to build multiple things with these people.
yeah. And to raise money and to transition because you know him so well. So did you start by building this kind of for yourself?
Oh yeah, exactly.
Right.
That's a good
Yeah.
point. Yeah. So basically, when we were kicked out off campus because of COVID, my intent was to build a team that was really, really close. That's why I love in person. And when I felt that slipping, I was like, this isn't the type of CEO I wanted to be. This isn't the type of company I wanted to build. And I'd left full-time medicine at this point, right? So I'm like, I'm not gonna not build the thing that I want to build.
Yeah.
So so I was like, okay, after I'd racked my brain for a long time and we'd come up with the like World of Warcraft for work idea, World of Workcraft is what we called it then. We decided to build out a prototype, a hacky prototype, and test it internally with our team. We did that, it took a couple of weeks, and it was like amazing what potential we saw for it to transform our team. So we essentially shelved the other thing we were working on and we kind of pivoted everybody full time to this thing. And it just completely changed our team. And then we said, okay, let's just see what other teams in our cohorts at Harvard thought about it. And so we brought them in and they were using it for their teams because remember, everybody was kicked off campus. So they were also using Zoom and Slack.
Yeah.
Um, the feedback was incredible. And so we thought, okay, maybe there's something here. And then that kind of all added evidence to our kind of belief system that we should really double down on it.
I like it. And then, okay, so you have your product. Everyone at Harvard likes it. How do you go about scaling it outside of Harvard? And at what point do you start fundraising for your new product?
Yeah. Well, I I mean, scaling it outside, that was kind of an easy thing for us because, you throw up a website, a billion people are having this problem. Okay, I
Yes.
say a billion. It's not even, it's
Maybe a
more than a
billion, maybe
billion.
billions.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but even more than a billion, like at that
Yeah.
point, because it was mid-pandemic.
Yeah.
So like at the time, I say a billion because I'm trying to choose a big number. Turns
Yeah.
out in this case, it's actually bigger than that.
Yeah.
And so everybody on the planet was having this problem. And so it was really easy. It's almost like, you find untouched land and you just dip a bucket into a lake to catch a bunch of fish. You know what I mean? I don't know if that's how the world used to be, but that's what I imagine in my head. And so getting early testers and other people outside of the kind of Ivy walls to validate was easier at that point in time.
Yeah, stop
Um,
playing Animal Crossing, stop watching, what was it, Tiger King,
yeah,
and come play test for us.
exactly right.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so then, so that was that. And then the fundraising thing, fundraising is always opportunistic. Like that's always the best way to do it. Um, Obviously you can do like surgical precision targeted fundraising and things like that, but like the majority of checks are going to be written in opportunistic times. And so we were able to benefit from that. So, uh, once we had, well, I guess, and the other thing is that when you build something that is new and seems to strike a chord positively for people, um, like other people who are successful and who are building cool stuff, they just find a way to get in touch with you. That's like one of the biggest learnings I've had is that like I've had to reach out less and instead get to um, field more kind of inbound meetings and things like that with really cool people. So that's how we met Bing, right? The
So
guy who, and he's like this incredible magnate in Silicon Valley. He's like board of Amazon and Duolingo and Zynga and Spotify and just he's just this incredible, incredible guy. And that's how we met him and a bunch of other people. And then inevitably they helped us with our fundraise, and that was successful for us.
yeah, and then getting clients was easy because everybody was having this problem. Okay,
Yeah.
and then what about it's January 2025, I was gonna say 2024, still adjusting,
Exactly.
but so many companies are doing RTO or some kind of hybrid work. So
Hmm.
how is that? How have you pivoted or have you had to pivot
Yeah.
just to that?
I guess this is such an interesting area because it's almost like a massive earthquake happened in 2020, metaphorically.
Yep.
And everything is being rebuilt as we speak, and it's not done yet, right? It's like as with any natural disaster, it doesn't take like a year to rebuild or 2 years or whatever. Everything is always much more complicated. It reminds me of an anecdote I always mention, which is like when we were fundraising, I'd say 20% of the investors that we talked to just thought about things in such a simplistic way. Like they were like, oh, well, you're building this thing for remote, but the vaccine is going to come out soon, and
Yeah.
everyone will just take the vaccine, and then everyone will be back at work, and the world will be back to normal. And I'm like, oh, you guys are so cute.
Oh, I work for the World Health Organization. Let me tell you this how it's gonna work.
Well, I mean, I think like you just need to have some modicum of understanding of how human behavior works. Like
Yeah.
that is just not how humans work. You'll have like some people who are like, great, I'm on board, like jab me. You'll have some people who are like, well, I believe that it's important, but I also believe my own individual autonomy to choose is important. Great, don't jab me. And that's perfectly reasonable. And then you'll have people who are like, wait, you're telling me to get jabbed? Go fuck yourself. You know? And so like it's just not as sim nothing is as simple when it comes to human behavior. And I think what we're dealing with now collectively is just another example of that, where RTO is happening in lots of different companies for lots of reasons. And some of it is surveillance, some of it is, the illusion of productivity, some of it is legitimate. Like if you're working on some hardware or something like that and you need kind of butts and seats or
Yeah,
butts on an assembly line or something like that. I guess you
right.
would want butts on hands on an assembly line. You know what I mean?
Yeah, people to work on an assembly line.
Thank you. That's more eloquent. Um, but at the end of the day, like I think if all managers and team leaders know is Zoom and Slack, then I don't blame them for wanting to go back in person. It's just tool choice is wrong, right? It's like I recently put together a squat rack and I didn't initially have like the right ratchet set. And it was like really hard to use wrenches to do that thing. I like hated my life when I was doing that. And then I got a proper ratchet set and I put it together in like 10 minutes. So I think like tool choice is really important. And if you try to solve everything with a single tool, i.e. in person or
Right.
Zoom and Slack, then you're not approaching the problem in a thoughtful enough way that balances the needs of your company, which are legitimate, with the needs of your people, which are really legitimate. So yeah.
What kind of squat rack did you buy?
I don't know what it's called, but it's like
I built this out too.
yeah, it's pretty good. I'll send you a link after.
Okay, we'll include it. I'm Yeah, I work in games. I like to dress up and I also like to lift. So we'll compare notes. But
Excellent.
I think RTO is so interesting too, because in the pandemic, from a recruitment standpoint, people had all the power. They would send their demand list. They would say, I need a sign-on bonus and I want to work 4 days a week and I want all of this. And then layoffs started happening, Meta's layoffs, which just made this windfall of people losing their jobs and companies feeling like they have the power and they can cancel all the extra benefits, remote work, DEI, anything that they feel is apparently not necessary, right? Whether you believe that or not. But to me, it seems like, I mean, we'll see on productivity, and I'm sure there's data on it. And like people, right, have these very variant reasons for why they're doing RTO. But we'll also see a shift again soon towards people being empowered and
Mhm.
candidates having the right to choose. And then it'll be the same thing. And so I'm so interested what companies who said, yeah, you can work remotely forever. Okay, no, now you're back in the office or you're
Yeah.
fired, will do during that shift. So
Totally.
time.
And that's the thing about tool choice, right? I mean,
Yeah.
if you choose something that actually works for people and the companies, and you have ways to track productivity and deliverables and stuff in a way that makes sense, you don't really need to be swinging pendulums. You can actually
Totally.
do something that is reasonable and that is,
Full time, no matter what.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
Stay
exactly. It
reasonable.
will always work. It's resilient, it's sturdy, it's a good solution. And so
Yeah.
that's what we're trying to build. We have teams that have half their companies in the office physically, and guess what? Like you're still gonna have designers who say, "Oh, we're in on Tuesdays and Fridays," and then product people who are like, "Oh, we're in on Mondays," and engineers who are like, "Actually, we prefer working in bed." You know.
Yes.
So
We
as
do.
soon as you have, right, exactly. And then as soon as you have a few of those, guess what? You're effectively a remote company.
I
So
mean, everyone's like, oh, yes, I have to badge in so I don't get fired. So I can sit on Zoom with my
totally.
team that is somewhere else, which is so irking. And the only reason they tolerate this is because they don't have the upper hand. But once
Yeah.
they have the upper hand, that is done. Okay, so
Mhm.
tell me about data and success stories of companies that have adopted SoWork from Zoom, Slack, or hopefully not Teams and Microsoft Stack, but whatever other stack they were using. How
Mhm.
that brought productivity, boost in culture,
Yeah.
positivity.
One of the things that keeps us going is that daily, I'm not even joking, daily we get messages from our customers that say super, just things that are just amazing. One of my recent favorites with the end of year wrap up, it's from a lady named Alexandra at Squid Pixels, the company. I'm sure she wouldn't mind me mentioning her name, but she sent us a message from her team that said, "SoWork is the best thing we did in 2024." And so, I'm not even joking, we get messages like that all the time. And so, the aggregate, if I was to give you kind of buckets of why people say things like this, it's because we allow them to, A, reduce costs. They're not paying for physical real estate. And earlier you asked a question about how is RTO affecting our business? Well, just as a small aside, turns out that when you have COVID plus an economic recession plus lower spending power plus higher rent prices plus all these things, and it's harder to raise money for 99% of startups out there or, businesses irrespective. The number one thing on executive minds is shit, we need to get burn under control, right? We need to make sure our costs are under control. And when you're faced with paying 10K a month or 20K a month for a building or a room or whatever it is.
Or much, much more, plus the cost of having everybody in San Francisco or whatever expensive location you've picked.
Yeah, exactly.
Seattle. Yeah. Where
Totally.
we live.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's ridiculous, right? And so, and then, you also often have to pay these things a year up front. And
Mm-hmm.
so then it's like, okay, well, who has that cash flow right now, right? Not that many people. And
Amazon.
so it's just a lot more of a elegant trade-off to at least try something that isn't that. And for a lot of companies, they've really taken to the virtual office space. And in the virtual office space, we're one of the top ones, if not the top one. And so, yeah, for us, we've actually noticed business going up instead of down. And I think it's because of all of these other things that are happening in the world right now economically. Um, so yeah, I think yeah, going back
Yeah.
to the question.
Yeah, just success stories. I mean, people think it's the best thing that's happened, but I imagine you get the kind of the water cooler talk back in the collab that would happen naturally that you would miss.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks for redirecting me. So,
Yeah.
the feedback buckets are really productivity and culture. And so in the productivity side, it's like, okay, great. This is awesome because we were able to centralize all of our tools and we were able to cut costs. And because we have a full Slack chat and obviously all the video services like Zoom and stuff like that. And because of our AI integrations, they're able to do some workflows faster. And those are kind of nascent for us, but they still work pretty well. And we're expanding that kind of repertoire. So on the productivity side, people are happy. And then on the culture side, that's been a huge area of happiness for our customers because they're able to, instead of being a little video tile on Zoom, they're actually able to represent themselves as whoever they might be in person. Instead of having just a single, profile picture on Slack, they're able to decorate their little desk space and have their cat or whatever other pet follow them. We have all sorts of pets and customizations available. So those are the two buckets that we hear the most about, and so those are the features that we try to lean into.
I like it. I also think that remote work enables a more diverse culture from a gender and global perspective. And there is data that a more diverse team yields more ROI. Because, I mean, if you have a baby that you are breastfeeding, for instance, maybe you're not going to want to go into the office. RTO is going to be terrible for you,
Mhm.
especially in the US when you have to go back after 3 months or whatever it is. So I think that there's a ton of benefits. And so you're in this virtual workspace world, which it sounds like you are the best or one of the best in. What is the future of SoWork? Do you feel like you might gamify it or there's other use cases for it, or you're really going to stay focused on this virtual workspace for the foreseeable future?
hmm It's a great question. I think, but first, I want to just agree with you on the equity perspective. Like, I think equal opportunity is really important. Equal outcome may or may not happen, and that's okay because that's life. But equal opportunity is really important. And the number of women, for example, that I've talked to that are like, well, we are living lives and we had a kid. I'm great at my job. I'm amazing at what I do. And all of a sudden, with exactly your case in
Yeah.
point, and how like it just doesn't seem fair without a clear rationale that actually passes some kind of sniff test, which it doesn't, you know,
Yeah.
to go back to the office. So I'm obviously super against things like that. And I think they fly in the face of equal opportunity initiatives that I think are really, really important to get everybody's brain power on the side of building, right? Um, Again, equal outcome may or may not happen. Doesn't have to be that way. That's fine. That's an individual thing. But the equal opportunity is the least that we can do from a company standpoint to try to make things the good version of inclusive.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the future of SoWork is virtual workspace or virtual workspace plus something else or to be decided?
We what we want to do is build a platform that's almost kind of like Roblox, but for work first. And
Hmm.
so, or for adults, I guess you could say. And so, it's really they have a lot of moral and ethical things that I don't agree with that I've read about from Roblox, but in a sense, I like what they built from a platform perspective, where they give you the tools and then you create whatever you want. And so, from our perspective, that's kind of what we're aiming to do, where we build a really rock solid, stable platform that's like multiplayer and multi-customizable. Multiple users can customize, and it's kind of like a buildable world,
Yeah.
like you'd find in lots of other games. And we want it to be open world. We want it to be like the MMO of starting with workplaces, but then other games and other social events and things like that. We just saw workplaces as the most extreme urgent need that people would
Yeah.
actually pay for. You know what I mean? So as it stands, we have a completely custom built engine, and it allows us to take our destiny into our own hands, so to speak. So we actually just like present day, we have a lot of important workplace tooling. And the next thing that a lot of teams are asking for is they don't want to be linked outside to play games with their teams. They want the gaming to happen inside SoWork. And so what we did was we shipped our first completely native game built on top of SoWorks engine. It's called Tank Wars. So the idea is, like it's almost like playing battle mode in Mario Kart, where but you have tanks that you can customize and use power-ups for and level up and things like that. So it's pretty fun. There's other things that we're doing in the gaming arena. So sneak peek, there's a gardening sim that will be there. Harvest Moon was one of my favorite things when I was a teenager and kind of like a preteen. So that type of gaming is dear to my heart. We have a whole like monster catching, monster battling system. I won't reveal the name because it's too cool, and so I don't want to I don't want to reveal it too soon. But that's going to happen as well. And so there's a bunch of gaming related things, and depending on what you're doing in the workplace, that could allow you to unlock more and more of the functionalities and special items in each game. So it's all kind of this loop that we
Yeah.
want to work really nicely together. And then, on top of that, we want lots of workplaces to kind of exist together in the same world, right? And so, if Spotify is hosting an event with some artist, if you subscribe to them, you might get a notification that says, "Hey, I know you're in your workplace right now, but this Spotify thing starts in an hour. You can get a ticket here and then teleport to their arena when you're ready." So that kind of like more massively multiplayer online space is what we're really going for.
I like it. I need to get SoWork for my team. Okay. I have one last question. Before I ask it, I want to point people to your website, sowork.com. Last question. You are a startup advisor and you've seen many different companies. What advice would you offer for any listeners who are considering starting their own company?
Mm. I like to give advice based on painful lessons.
Yes.
And I'm not a huge fan of kind of academiaizing things. That's not a word, but I think experience is really the best teacher.
Yeah.
And so I would say as much as you can, as you start your company, as you recruit your team, as you validate your problem, which is pretty much the first thing you need to do. Um, you figure out pricing and fundraising and all the different things that you need to do. Don't be too much in a rush to grow up and start running. Like it's every entrepreneur is like, we want to build a unicorn, we want to be a $1 billion company. Yeah, okay, that's fine. Don't like necessarily just give up on that, but do things in the right order. It's really important to make sure that your actions align in a priority based manner with what you actually need to do. And the best framework I've seen to make sure you're doing that is the idea that there's every company, every team has an actual stage and a behavioral stage. And as long as your behavioral stage is matching your actual stage, whether it's in fundraising, product development, customer development, team building, etc., then you give yourself the best chance to be successful. There's a really, really good article about this that I can send you after. It's by the Startup Genome Project or something like that. Um, I can't remember exactly what it's called, but it honestly it was life-changing for me in my younger CEO days. I'll send that along because I think it could be really helpful to other people to really internalize. And I'm not joking. Like it's really important that your behavioral stage matches your actual stage. And if, for example, you get ahead of yourself, just bring yourself back. Like get excited, that's fine, celebrate, whatever. Bring yourself back because you're going to be avoiding so much pain later on. You'll have to trust me on that. And if you don't, I'll look forward to an email from you to tell me I was right once you realize it because it's a law. It's like a Newtonian
Yeah.
law.
I talked to so many founders like, yeah, we're going to hire these people. I'm like, okay, what are you looking for? Oh, well, yeah, we don't have that yet. Like, oh, do you have a job description? No, but that's kind of what we're thinking. Like, okay, we're gonna walk first, and then we're
Yeah,
gonna run.
order is important. Order of operations.
Order is so important. We've been talking to Vishal Punwani, CEO and co-founder of SoWork. Vish, where can people go to sign up for your product or contact you to tell you that you're right or just to get in touch?
Yeah, you can go to SoWork.com if you want to try out SoWork. We do free trials, so you can go for that. And otherwise, you can find me on Twitter. I'm at VishyVish. So I'll see you
Amazing.
there.
Thank you.
No worries. Nice to see you.
Thanks so much for listening to the show this week. To catch all the latest from Here's Waldo, you can follow us on LinkedIn. Be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes. We'll see you next time.